At this time, we are going to be talking about the Common Core state standards, particularly math, and some of the actually fairly dramatic changes that are coming forward. So, Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, President Parker. As the board members know, we have 2 teachers on special assignment whose work this year is, excuse me, is K-12 Common Core State Standards in Mathematics. We have presented some information to the board in relationship to the changes, and we're getting now to a point where we're going to use the best colloquial phrase I can, fish or cut bait in relationship to some decisions that need to be made so we can inform our component feeder school districts as to what they need to do to prepare, as well as our teachers. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it, Craig, are you going to? I'll turn it over to Dr. Snyder, who will take the lead.
Okay. Well, thank you. This audio.
I think you need to be a little bit closer to that mic.
That good?
Yeah.
Is off?
All the tech guys left. You're a tech guy. Come on there. Oh, Todd's hiding back there.
There you go.
That's better.
That's better. Okay. So, as Dr. Cash was saying, we have a lot to talk about in terms of pretty big changes with Common Core Math. And so we have the iTunes U course that we provided a lot of resources, a lot of information. And so hopefully you have access to all of that. And we're going to talk you through what's in there. Not go into all the details that we provided, but really highlight some key areas that I think it's worthwhile us discussing during this time. And then again, you have access to all this, and certainly we are here to help you navigate all the information related to Common Core Math shifts. So one thing we want to highlight as we go through this course, we're going to be kind of using that outline on the left side there. First topic is that we just want to show you the goals that Janet and I thought would be important for us to go through during our time here together. The first goal is really to help you understand the process that our teachers, our secondary math teachers, went through to think about Common Core high school level courses in terms of how to organize those standards into a traditional or an integrated math sequence, because Common Core at the high school level does not have courses broken into, does not have the standards broken into courses, but leaves that up to a district level or local level to make that decision. Number 2 is to talk about pathways, so ways students might go through these courses, particularly at the secondary level. And then number 3 is to talk about a rollout plan or a phase-in transition plan for our courses as we transition from our 97 standards, our math courses based on 97 standards, as we transition into Common Core Math courses. So that's the general 3 big areas that we want to touch upon. Any thoughts or questions about that?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. So first thing we want to do is just provide a few very broad overview strokes along the idea of what is Common Core Math, to emphasize the big shifts that teachers and students will be going through as we transition into Common Core. The California Math Framework was just recently finalized and adopted by the State Board of Education in November. So we have the official guidance from the State Board of Education about Common Core Math. And so we just wanted to have that available for you as we have the web link there. That has guided a lot of our discussions about how do we organize courses for Santa Barbara Unified. In the framework and in Common Core Mathematics, it's important for all of us to understand Common Core Math has 2 sets of standards, or 2 components that are essentially equally weighted. It's the content, the what of math, and the standards of math practice, the doing of math. And I want to highlight that because these standards of math practice for our teachers and our students are going to be something that really is what makes Common Core Math what it is. It's something that will be assessed by both Smarter Balance as well as UCs about how well our A through G courses that we're going to design, our math courses, address the Common Core standards. They're going to be looking at how our courses address the standards of math practice. So, and
So I think before we leave this slide, one word that we use a lot in this district is rigor. And under Common Core, there is a specific definition of mathematical rigor. And that definition includes students having a conceptual understanding, procedural skill and fluency, and the ability to apply the mathematics to given situations. The 97 standards that we're coming out of were very focused on procedural skill and fluency. And so we are adding in pieces of conceptual understanding and application that students are not familiar with.
And I'm just going to jump in because I'm smiling for people who may not speak edu shortcut. And when you say 97 standards, it almost sounds like there are 97 standards from the past, but you're referring to the 1997 California standards, state standards.
Correct. Thank you. So when we are looking at those two sets of standards, and again, that major emphasis on these standards of math practice, two things to really show you: the smarter balance piece that students will be assessed on in grades 3 through 8, and then finally in grade 11 to demonstrate college and career readiness. The practice standards are going to be assessed unlike the CST, the California Standards Tests in mathematics. Those assessments really only addressed students' content knowledge. Smarter Balance is really going to make claims, find evidence to make claims about those 4 areas of mathematics. And you'll notice that in these, you can see it's much more than just the procedures of mathematics. It's the practices. You'll see words like communicating, constructing arguments, reasoning, problem solving. Those are all exact words coming out of the standards of math practice. So Smarter Balance will be designing assessment items to assess that, and then providing an evaluation of whether that student is progressing towards college and career readiness based on those practice standards and the content knowledge. We're going to demonstrate what that looks like in a moment, so you can get an actual sense of what that means from a math assessment point of view. The other thing we want to show you is that UC has adapted their A through G requirements for mathematics. And throughout the course template that we're going to have to submit new course approvals for any courses that we design under Common Core because of the shift that UCs are doing. In this template, which we will be using, all throughout it refers to the mathematical practices. And so do the key assignments address the standards of math practice? Do the instructional methods and strategies address the standards of math practice? Do the assessments address the standards of math practice? So that's a huge change. So we need to think about that as we design these courses. So to give you a sense of what that looks like from an assessment point of view, our CSTs versus our Smarter Balance, the types of assessments. Maybe Janet, I'll put this item up here from a CST released item, I hope. This is a CST item. Go ahead, Janet.
So this is a test item that I'm very familiar with, having taught 7th grade and 8th grade algebra. And so in this type of problem, a student is given a word problem. Really, in my math class, I'm trying to teach them the relationship between the number of days and the amount of money to be able to write a relationship of y equals mx plus b. On the CST released item, students can work frontwards by writing an equation and solving, or they can take those answers and work backwards to come up with the correct answer. And so there's 2 ways of doing this, and when a student answers that question correctly, I don't know if they are able to write a mathematical equation. I just know that they can answer that question. Whether they did it frontwards or backwards, I don't know.
And so Smarter Balance is really trying to give everyone, students, teachers, parents, a sense of what kids do know. And so here is an example of a released item that Smarter Balance has put out to assess students' knowledge in the same area of algebra, same math area of algebra, but you'll see the complexity difference in this assessment item. You want to describe this problem?
I think if I scroll up. So here, with Smarter Balance, I can see in question number 1, students are going to be asked directly to write the equation for each of these photo books that are potentially going to be purchased. So here I will know whether students can write an equation given a linear situation, if you scroll down a little bit more. And I also will know for question 2, if there's 28 pages, how much is it going to cost? For number 3, if it costs $49, how many pages? There's no guessing allowed here. So students are going to put in answers, and the attention to precision, whether they're computing accurately and whether they understand the mathematical concepts, is something that we can truly understand where they're at. When you look at what happened under the CST question items, I don't know. They could be a good guesser, they could have worked backwards, or maybe they do understand how to write a linear equation.
So the nice thing about Smarter Balance is you can see the level of rigor in what Janet described: conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, application. You can see it in the difference here between the Smarter Balance item versus the CST item. This is all to give you an overview of the level of mathematics difference that our students and our teachers are experiencing as we transition to Common Core mathematics. So with that sort of quick overview in mind, we want to now look at the secondary math courses that we as a local district are going to have to figure out and offer and create as we transition to Common Core. So one thing to show you is this is the Common Core pathway laid out. We're starting at 7th grade here, so our secondary program. There is a set of 7th grade standards. There is a set of 8th grade standards. So there are courses that you can create, and we have a course description of that for each of those. Once you get into high school, the standards can be arranged in whichever sequence you would choose. The framework has offered 2 options. What they're referring to as traditional and what they're referring to as integrated. So we're going to take a little bit of time looking at those. And so what we've also put in the course here for you is some direct quotes out of the framework so that you can see the language coming from the State Board of Education about the difference between their 1997 standards and the changes coming with the Common Core, California Common Core standards. So let's go on to something that Common Core definitely, as we as teachers have come to learn about what these Common Core standards are, the level of rigor, the standards of math practice, the level of content shift upwards for all students. Coming out of the framework, you can see that the level of support needed for all students to shift towards this new level of rigor is high. We're going to need a lot of support. We need to think that through as a district, what that looks like. We have some questions that we've put in here. We don't want to necessarily go into that right now. That isn't one of our goals for this time together, but that is something we definitely need to think about. The level of support will be huge, I think. What we do want to share with you is that Common Core, the California framework, has also put out that there are standards beyond the Common Core mathematics standards that are called plus standards. These are plus standards, these are additional standards not assessed by Smarter Balanced. These are math standards designed for students, high school students who are anticipating becoming quantitative majors in college. So your physical sciences, your engineering students, your math students, statistics majors. And so Common Core has developed those those plus standards that they suggest putting into your high school sequence somewhere. California framework has outlined a pre-calculus course. So they've redesigned their pre-calculus course to be more Common Core aligned. That is one option of addressing those plus standards. And we're also going to talk about other ways of addressing those plus standards. But definitely Common Core and the CDE and the State Board of Education is highlighting these as additional standards that districts need to consider.
That's good.
Yep. Okay. So, talking about these high school standards and how to organize them into courses, here I want to describe the process that our teachers went through. This is a decision because it's designing courses that board members will need to make, and in terms of what our math teachers have done to understand to understand what they need to, what am I trying to get at here?
Understand the implications of the choices.
Thank you. There's a very detailed process.
That's right.
I'm telling you, this is a team that is a K-12 team to get us through this transition to Common Core. It's a rigorous transition. Here is what our PLCs have done. So our math PLCs at every one of our secondary sites, so all 8 sites, what we have done is we have had teachers analyze, and I'm going to hold these up for you. They are also in the course here. So the framework, here's what the framework has offered. A traditional pathway. And I'm going to highlight the word traditional as, let's put it in quotes, and we're going to address that soon. But the traditional pathway has the courses Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. There is an analogous course called the framework calls Integrated. Math 1, Math 2, Math 3 these are all working names that we can call them whatever we want. That's just how the framework denotes these 2 sequences. Something extremely important to understand is the standards are the exact same standards. The expectations are the exact same expectations. There is nothing different about them from a math point of view except the order in which students go through these high school standards. The assessment of Smarter Balance is an 11th grade assessment. So from Smarter Balance's point of view, they do not care which order the students go through this because they're assessing at the end of 11th grade when these 3 courses, whichever order we do them in, is done. So it's really just the pathways we choose to go through them. So here's what our teachers have done to understand this, the differences between these 2 pathways. And if you want a closer view, we've got links to these diagrams that I'm going to show you. But here's what our teachers have done. They have taken and I'm going to hold up the correct one here. This is the traditional pathway. So the traditional pathway has, looking at these columns here, the Algebra 1, the Geometry, and the Algebra 2 courses outlined in terms of their math topics. So all these bullets are little math topics. Same thing over here in the integrated fashion, year 1, year 2, year 3. The first thing we asked them to do was take a look at the 2 different ways of ordering these. What do you notice is the exact same? And what is the exact same is the highlights. So in year 1, all this yellow, all the way down the page, no matter which sequence you do it in, it's the exact same topics. Same thing for year 2. The blue is the exact same. The same thing for year 3. The green is the exact same. And so when you choose this one or this one, everything that's highlighted is the exact same. So our teachers realize, wow, no matter which one we choose, there's a lot of identicalness between them. There's not much difference. And so then we said, for the ones that there is a difference, what is different about them? And so one of the things that they looked at was, what is the continuity between from year to year? So from year 1 to year 2, what connects, what mathematical ideas connect from year 1 to year 2 in each sequence? Or from year 2 to year 3? Or possibly from year 1 to 2 to 3, all the way through? And which sequence has more connection versus which sequence has more gaps. And so a gap would be considered you address the topic in year 1, and then you don't address it in year 2, but then you come back to it in year 3. And so our teachers immediately realized that there was a lot of connection in one sequence and a lot of gaps in the other sequence. And so that was something that you'll notice when you read the teacher input. That is something that they have addressed or that they have highlighted. So I think something to just clarify for everyone is the notion of traditional. We have the idea that, and this is actually stated pretty well in the framework, that traditional is not what you would typically think of as traditional. So if you think of traditional Algebra 1, California's version of Algebra 1 now is very different than the California version from the 1997 standards. So if we go to this, this table here and we look at the Common Core Algebra 1, it is essentially the second half of the 97 Algebra 1 standards and the first half of the 97 Algebra 2 standards, with a mixture of some statistics in between. So it's a course that really is unlike the Algebra 1 course that our CSTs were based on and our 97 standards were based on. If you take a look at Algebra 2, Common Core Algebra 2 is also something that is not what people might expect. It's the second half of our 97 Algebra 2. It's a tremendous amount of trigonometry, and it is a good portion of the first year of elementary statistics, or AP Stats. And this is something, as our teachers look at all this, and let's actually look at Math 8, which is a new course that California is having districts have, and this is something that is new. It is a course that has the first half of our 97 algebra course in it. Plus it has geometry, plus it has pre-algebra topics. The idea is, and this is laid out very clearly in the framework, that the new Common Core Algebra 1 course is not the same as that old one, and you can see lots of bold language and words like rigor and difference in the framework. And so this is a big shift. We've added a whole foundational course called Math 8 in this middle school sequence of grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8.
So I think the piece that is different for community members to understand is that when we were working with the 1997 California standards, there were standards for grades K through 7, and then the expectation was that all students would start in algebra in 8th grade. There were no 8th grade standards, and so it caused a bit of a mess. And so with Common Core, there is an actual 8th grade math course that includes some of the algebra that 8th graders have learned, some geometry from high school, and the traditional pre-algebra material. But there's a new course that's there that hasn't been there before. And so that is new. And so when people think about algebra, first of all, Common Core isn't the same algebra course, isn't asking students to do the same mathematical content, and there's also an additional course sort of added in there. So it's a shift in people's thinking.
So that was part of the work our teachers did to understand the course sequences, that there's a lot of similarity. Traditional algebra is not the same as the Common Core algebra may not be the same was what they were anticipating, and that there may be some other misconceptions. We have a page of misconceptions laid out that you might want to spend some time looking at. And so after our teachers went through this analysis, they have submitted to you their input. And I can give you a quick summary of this input as of this moment. And so we have 8 secondary math departments that will be submitting. 7 of them have submitted as of today. They went through that analysis, as I said. And of those 7, 6 of, it says 5 up there, but it is 6, have recommended to you an integrated sequence. The question we really put before them is which would be best for students' mathematical development to be college and career ready to take college level mathematics. And so as they did this analysis, this is the recommendation. You can have all the data so they actually submitted their recommendation with a rationale on a Google form that you have. There's a link down here that is the actual submissions. Some of the highlights of why, the rationales why they chose integrated, you can see are listed there. So those are direct quotes from our liaisons who did the actual submission. So stronger connection between algebra and geometry. Integration allows for continuous learning of many standards. Hopefully help students need less review in the third year of mathematics. Smarter balance assessments are integrated. So there was one school that, as of today, said we haven't been able to come to a consensus on whether we should recommend integrated or traditional. They have a rationale for both. They have pros and cons for both sequences. Again, you can see their details in the submission, but I want to highlight the quote that they said. We were not able to come to a consensus because we want more information. So as soon as they get more information, maybe they will be able to come to a consensus. This afternoon's meeting, so they were referring to a meeting that we hosted last week to help all of our math teachers understand the current up-to-date situation that math is in right now. So they said, we do agree that pedagogically integrated makes sense for students, but many of us are hesitant due to the practicalities of implementation and how it would affect our student and teacher day-to-day life in the classroom. And I think all of us have those same questions about what does Common Core look like day-to-day? What does implementation look like? So that's where that school is at. And we have one more school that tomorrow during late start, I believe they're finishing up their discussion, will be able to submit their recommendation to you and a rationale. So
I'm going to pause you there
that's where
because I want to ask a question on this, and there may be other board members on this particular point. And one of the things that's running through my mind is that the state will be adopting curriculum in 2014 for mathematics. And I'm sure that there are districts out there that have been piloting some of the proposed curricula. And I don't know if you two have had a chance to look at some of the curricula that's out there that went in 2013 that's gone to the board or to the various committees at the state level that have been looking at what California should adopt. But I could see that, we may think that integrated is great, but what if it turns out that the traditional sequence is what has the fantastic curricula or curriculum? And so that's a question mark. I don't know if teachers have looked at some of the possible publishing, what publishing companies have put out in math in either integrated or traditional sequence. That's one question I have. My other thing that I just want to point out is that I could see, we have students at every level in math. And it was interesting because one of the lectures that we were hearing, it was actually about, it was more at the elementary level, but I'm sure that it's at every grade level that when you talk about what they're supposed to learn at a specific grade level, that when Linda Darling Hammond had done a study at one school, she said that she found in a particular classroom that only 10% of the kids that were in that classroom were actually where they were supposed to be. And so there was the whole spectrum to address. We will have parents that are concerned when you talk about Math 8, that the new expectation is that every 8th grader is in the exact same math class. And so it would be great if you could talk to that point as well. So if you could talk a little bit about what are you thinking about in the great unknown of adopting a particular sequence without knowing what there is in terms of curriculum to support. And then when we say Math 8, that doesn't mean that every 8th grader is in Math 8. So if you could talk about that.
I think in terms of the textbooks, so one of the things that is definitely known is that publishers are putting out what they're calling Common Core aligned textbooks. They are on state adopted lists and so forth. One of the things that if you actually look at those textbooks, many publishers are not, I'm wanting to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm calling them sort of version 1 of a Common Core aligned textbook. Literally, they are moving topics from chapter 12 and putting them in chapter 5. And because it seems like that is the better place to put it because it aligns with a standard document that this topic became earlier than in the 97 standards. The content is not changing. The publishers are switching chapters around. The other thing that we are seeing publishers doing in their Common Core aligned textbooks is some of them aren't even shifting topics around, but they're now just denoting that this exact same topic that showed up in their previous year's book it's the exact same material, but now it has a symbol that says Common Core, or it has the math practice written out in the margin, or it has the number of the standard. The content, the questions, the level of rigor has not changed from a Common Core textbook to a previous textbook. And those are ones that are on the state adopted list for purchase.
And I'm going to be very reticent to bring forward any textbook publisher's recommendations during the first iteration. I went through the California State Standards textbook adoption process. In this district, we purchased several $1 million worth of textbooks. And to have teachers repeatedly tell me as a school site administrator, why did we spend the money? I can't use this. It doesn't do what I need to do. I'm spending my own personal money buying all these other supplemental materials. Are you going to make me use this textbook? Do I have to give it to the students? Does it have to be in my classroom? All of those things I'm very confident will occur with the Common Core. And plus, I've instructed all of our instructional leaders, including our TOSAs, to stay focused on the content standards themselves, and that our focus needs to be on that, and then finding materials anywhere that align to those content standards. I'm hopeful that we won't go, well, Houghton Mifflin looks the best, so let's go with them kind of deal.
Well, the answer to some of those questions that teachers would have asked you back then was yes. Yes, it did have to be in your classroom. There were people from the state that were going to come by into your classroom and check that those books were there. And my hope is that as we're in this process, that the state doesn't turn around and decide to crack down and put things on districts and make us do things like buy curricula that's not ready. And I'll let you finish up on the Math 8 piece, and then we will move on to the next question.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say something about the curriculum piece, and so because I have people that are near and dear to me trying to figure out every day what they're going to teach, and so there is something about having materials. And so the idea that there is nothing out there is something that we need to work on changing people's ideas of that. The state of Utah has an online integrated math course. There's other states that have traditional math courses. If you look at High Tech High, in collaboration with Mathalicious and Illustrative Math, there's a group of entities that are working together. They are producing a 6th grade and a 9th grade course this year, and it's all in Google Docs. It's loose, but it is there for people to go and look at. It's loose. It is flexible. It's adapting. It's changing. And so there are places that we could go and look and say, okay, this is sort of what we're going to follow, and then personalize it, because it's draft one. Whether it's a book draft one or an online piece draft one, there are draft ones out there. The question is, are we going to pay money for them, or are we going to find it somewhere else?
And a big difference with Common Core compared to our 97 standards. 97 standards were California specific, and so there were textbooks that were for California. And with Common Core, the whole concept is that it is available. It's the same set of standards and learning expectations across the 46 or 7 states and entities that have adopted Common Core. So we are all doing this together. That's why we can pull from Utah, from New York, and we don't have to rely on textbook publishers who are focused on a particular state. I'm sure they are adopting their practices as Common Core, because it has just changed, whether it's digital content or whether it's the fact that California no longer has the stronghold on standards, because now it's across all these states. So.
And Math 8?
So Math 8, that connects to goal number 2 that we talked about that we want to address. So we have a whole set of topics. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's really about acceleration.
Right.
Right. So that is the second half here that we want to.
Okay, great. Then we'll
talk
address
about.
it then. Ms. Idelson?
I had a couple questions. One, I've had parents express to me, well, what if a child moves from another county or another district, and they're coming in and they've had a traditional math sequence and now they're having an integrated? How is that going to be dealt with? Mm-hmm. And then I also had a question about the Standards Plus that you were talking about, and you mentioned Precalculus would be one of these courses, or was that, and would that be designed with more rigor for some kids, or you're just saying that Standards Plus would be the kids to take the Precalculus? And does that then go into your regular calculus AP sequence from there? And then the third thing, and this I just want to clarify, the whole district adopts either traditional or integrated, not, say, if one school says, oh, we'd prefer the traditional, and everybody else votes for the integrated, it's one or all, one for all, basically, is what I would presume.
I would think that is the best approach.
Okay.
It kind of ties to what you just pointed out in terms of kids moving from district to district. Imagine kids going from school to school.
Exactly, yeah.
So I think, so there were several questions in there with the
Out-of-town, state, traditional, integrated.
one of the things around that, I mean, that's going to be, we're not going to be able to solve that problem for every single possible situation, because a kid could come from a state that the entire state is traditional or integrated, and they come to our district and it happens to be the opposite of where that student came from. If you want to get a sense of who nearby, other districts nearby us, other high school districts nearby us, what are they choosing? I believe we have that data, and it seems like a lot of the districts nearby are going with an integrated approach, but we can get those specific districts. And so the likelihood of students coming to us outside of our district and where they're coming from, we have that data.
It would be also interesting to know statewide what direction the wind's blowing in that sense also.
We're trying to find that out, but there's no database,
Yeah.
we're literally,
Happening.
I'm asking my superintendent colleagues, I asked all of my superintendent colleagues in Southern California SUPs, every district that has made a decision has picked integrated.
Yeah. So in terms of pre-calculus, the state board in its new framework that was just adopted has really redesigned that pre-calculus course. Most of that pre-calculus course has these plus standards embedded. So you're asking a very good point. Does that mean that any kid in pre-calculus would be doing these plus standards, which seems to be tied towards a quantitative major? That's the whole concept of it. So yes, that is something we need to think about. What does pre-calculus from the state's perspective mean now, and how does that impact how we have thought about pre-calculus? I think anecdotally, math teachers, high school math teachers in particular, see pre-calculus as always having been sort of revamped as it's what is needed in that course. It's that bridge course between your 3 years of preparatory math, and meaning Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, and college level math, calculus. And so that bridge does change depending on the needs of students and what the expectations are. So with Common Core, you've upped the level of mathematics in an Algebra 2 course to incorporate so much more than what we have traditionally thought of Algebra 2 being, that we are going to have to look at our pre-calculus to see what needs it's going to serve. So yes, I think you're bringing up a very good question. Did we, I think we got problem.
All right, keep
Okay.
moving.
So, as we go thinking about the accelerated piece, we want to just highlight that the framework has a lot of information about this notion of acceleration and students who may be able to move through the Common Core standards more quickly. And we're going to talk about what that means in a moment. But we have several quotes from the framework that talk about this. And here's a quote, and I'm going to just read the top part. Students who are capable of moving more quickly without omitting critical concepts and topics. There is a lot of data that the state has, that I think we have anecdotally, that students, as we move them, we want to make sure they are not missing out on important foundational topics and concepts that they will miss later on because we made decisions about them too early. So that's just something that Common Core is really built on, this idea of a progression of learning, that we're trying to get folks to be college and career ready. And so making decisions too early about something that is immediate rather than long-term is something we have to think about. Another key idea from the framework is that in order to accelerate, students must prove that they are proficient in the California Common Core math grades K through 8. Those were really designed by Common Core to be foundational. Elementary, in particular, K5, K6, is foundational mathematics. Not easy mathematics, not anyone can do it mathematics, but foundational. They are, those elementary teachers, those elementary students, that's where Common Core math gets the strongest foundation. I always say math is different. It's the one discipline that starts in kindergarten that goes all the way through grade 16 as a progression of learning. It's a building subject, and it's the only one that starts in kindergarten and goes all the way through. And so we want folks to not miss key ideas. The framework has offered readers, if you're going to make decisions about accelerating, 4 ideas to think about. And so this is something that we will talk about, these ideas, in a moment, but I just want to highlight that those are in the framework. And then finally, this is a part that, it's interesting that this is in the acceleration part of the framework. They call this section the support for K-12 teachers, because as we think about accelerating, that means we have to have teachers who are building courses that are designed to accelerate. That means instruction is going to go faster. We're talking the level of rigor has increased, and this is true for our teachers as well. Both their own knowledge and their instructional strategies need to change. And so we have to provide support for teachers both designing and instructing and teaching this new idea of Common Core and accelerated Common Core. So here's what the California framework offers as options. They have laid out several options for districts to consider in terms of acceleration, or what you should realize is a phrase called compaction, and I think we've talked about it before, but this notion of compacting, again, standards cannot be omitted or skipped, and so a set of standards needs to, if you're going to accelerate, needs to get compacted in time. And so California has offered several compaction options for students who may go more quickly. Janet and I have gone through and looked at these pathways and come up with our own implications and questions. We will highlight some of those for you, but we want to give you the visual of what California has offered as a compaction option. One option is to compact or make a decision right after 6th grade. Can we compact, can a student go through a compacted grade 7, grade 8, and math year 1, high school year 1 course, whether it's Algebra 1 or Math 1? 3 years of content without omitting, skipping any standards, in 2 years of seat time with a teacher. That is true acceleration. That means starting in 7th grade in August, a student will need to complete grade 7 standards by somewhere around February, end of February. Beginning of March, do the first half of grade 8 or Math 8 until the end of the school year. Then summertime happens, and then August in grade 8 happens, and finish the second half of Common Core Math 8. And then in a roughly November timeframe, start your first year of high school math and finish from roughly November until the end of May, because it is true acceleration. The rate of learning and teaching has to go faster. That is one, and for us as teachers, that brings up a concern about we are going faster with content we're supposed to go deeper and more rigorous in conceptual understanding and application, not surface level procedure. So that is a concern. Any other implications or questions?
I think just having taught 7th grade algebra before, students got to 7th grade algebra by skipping material and content in elementary schools. And so they arrived in 7th grade, and we went at the rate of 1 course per year. I would teach an algebra course. And so when we're looking at this compaction, I have to think that I would be teaching a course and a half. And what does it mean to teach a course and a half of Common Core math? And that's something that we haven't experienced at this point in time as teachers, even in CST, under the California standards, old California standards. And so now we're asking for deeper and more rigorous standards and to move at the rate of a year and a half of content per year. And
Yes, Ms. Limon.
I have a question, and I mean, in thinking about this, I'm also thinking, gosh, like, are we going to know? Are we going to have any evidence that this compact model versus that compact model or non-compact model will be effective? And I don't know this, and this may be a silly question, but is there any room to pilot a type of compact program or pathway course sequence? It just seems like this is a really big. I'm thinking, like, who's going to do a year and a half worth of coursework in a year and get it?
so here's
And
the
there
que-
will be some students, but I don't know that it's the number, and I could be really wrong on this. I don't know that it'll be the numbers that I think of right now when I think of who's accelerated.
Right. And so what I think about is, if I'm talking to a parent, would I rather tell them that we're going to compact your child, we're going to have an accelerated pathway, and we're going to do a year and a half of content in a year. And next fall, Smarter Balanced will come out with their interim assessments. And if we start giving these interim assessments and find out that students aren't doing well, okay, then what are we going to do? So it would be a pilot, right? And we will all pilot it. So do I want to tell parents that we're doing a year and a half of content in 1 year? I get information from Smarter Balanced assessments going, whoa, this is not working for our best math students. Or would I prefer to have an enhanced pathway, something that is enriched in some way that has yet to be defined? Would I rather start in August with an enhanced pathway that I go on, and if I came up with the problem that students are doing very well on the Smarter Balanced assessment, then tell parents, maybe we need to accelerate and adapt it that way. And so when we start getting that information back from Smarter Balanced, would I rather have people do poorly? If in the worst case scenario, people do poorly, I'm going to have to slow down. Or people are doing really well, I'm going to need to speed up. And so it is going to have to be something that once we choose, we're going to have to be flexible and adaptable, because we're dealing with people's children. We're dealing with real people.
Yeah, right.
And I think you very intuitively hit on a fundamental difference, and that is the definition of the word acceleration in our current system versus that in the Common Core.
So we are going to, after we show you the 3 compaction and acceleration options offered by the framework, we want to talk about that, what Dr. Cash just said, when we bring it to our local situation that we've had. So let's take a look at another option, which for a lot of folks is a new option, at least locally here, that you might choose to accelerate later in high school. So let students go through their K-8 foundational math experience. Again, remember, we have a Math 8 course designed by Common Core, adopted by California as a important math piece that has been missing for 15 years. They have data showing that some of our students in this state are not getting the foundational knowledge they need to be successful in the high school math courses. And so let's let them have that foundational K-8 piece, and then decide, especially as they transition to high school, more maturity, more mathematically developmentally further along, closer to college and career, meaning they may have some sense of what they want to do. And so now we have a decision point where students starting 9th grade, one option is to compact them there, do part of Math 1, part of Math 2, and, I'm sorry, I should, reading that, and I do Math 1, Math 2, and Math 3 in the course of 2 years. So you're still going at the same rate. It's a fast rate, but it's just later on. Maybe the students are better prepared to go at that faster rate then. And then pre-calculus and calculus. Another option that is similar in some ways to that is what California is referring to as an enhanced pathway. Again, the decision point is put until after grade 8. And then notice the difference here. It's a nice, what I think is nice, because it's an enhanced year 1, year 2, year 3. They have subsumed the pre-calculus course that has those plus standards into the 3 years of high school mathematics. And therefore, it's 4 years of content into 3 years of time. So the rate is not as fast, and you actually might have that pre-calculus STEM and the plus standard experience sort of sprinkled throughout those 3 years of high school math, where it makes sense to sprinkle it, rather than all clumped together in one separate course later on. And then those students would come out of that 3-year sequence ready for calculus. So, yes.
So, addressing a question that somebody asked before, when I look at this pathway, it seems to imply that all students are in Math 6, Math 7, and Math 8, and I don't think that that's, at this point in time, a reality, and that whatever this, if an acceleration point was decided at grade 9, there needs to be opportunities for students to have an enhanced 7th, 8th grade course offering. We have far too broad of a range at this point in time for teachers to be able to differentiate and meet all students' needs. And so, looking at this graphic from California, this is the California graphic, there would, I have to imagine that there would be more than one pathway. It could, in this picture, students would be getting 7th grade Common Core standards, and then the question is, what's the enhancement? What's the additional rigor? Are they projects? Are they, I don't know what they are. And that's what we'd have to define. What's the content difference? What's the experience that students have that's different between a Common Core Math 7 and a Common Core Math 7 Enhanced? And once we figure out what we're doing, we can figure out what those if we went this direction and not compacting, we could figure out what those enhancements would need to be. But I don't see this at this point in time being one stream, everybody in one class.
Thank you.
So, if you wanted to see all 3 of those all in one piece, we've put them back to back to back. So,
And board members, I'm just going to pause for a second here. It is 6 o'clock, but with board permission, maybe able to run another 15 minutes? Okay, thank you.
okay. So, when we talk about, I'm going to jump to this one here. When we talk about our current, the way we have been doing things for a while, then we start to think, how do we match what we are currently doing locally in Santa Barbara compared to what California's new framework is offering under the new expectations of Common Core? And so,
That's you.
just to highlight a visual of what Santa Barbara Unified has been doing for pathways, I'm going to show you this. It's a simplified version, but it's roughly the 3 levels, 3 pathways we have in our district. We actually have, you might be able to find 2 or 3 more within each of these levels. But we have what we call a college prep pathway. 6th grade, 7th grade, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, each year happening 1 year at a time. And again, notice there is no, in our 97 standards, no Math 8, unlike Common Core now. This, what we've been calling an accelerated pathway from in our old language, or our old standards, is this second row here, this second level. So what tends to happen is in 6th grade, some 6th and 7th grade 97 content is taught in that 1 year, but you can't teach 2 years of content in 1 year of time, basically, and so people make choices of what they take out. And especially since Algebra 1 is the course that comes after, a lot of the stuff that is taken out of that 6th grade experience is geometry, is probability and statistics, stuff that you would not find in an Algebra 1 course. And so students miss out on content that later on, I think there is some evidence to show they conceptually have missed some things that is built upon later on in the sequence. But regardless of that, students then get into an Algebra 1 course in 7th grade, and then they go to geometry, Algebra 2, a 4th course, probably Precalculus, and then calculus. But the rate at which they do that is the same rate at which college preparatory students do it. It's 1 year at a time, 1 course at a time. And so they aren't really accelerating like how we're talking about it in Common Core, where you actually have to accelerate if that's what you're doing, because you cannot skip content and in Common Core. And so this is what we are currently doing to get to calculus in 11th grade for our accelerated, and to get to calculus in 12th grade for our college preparatory students.
So I think one of the questions that Craig and I really grapple with is, when we look at the accelerated pathway, what is it that we are working to achieve? Are we working to have a top track for students that need something different? Are we looking for offering people access to algebra content? Or are we looking at an 11th grade calculus piece? And depending on what the answer is to what we are trying to do with our pathways, there's different ways to get there. And so, is it 11th grade calculus? Is it algebra content in 7th grade, which really isn't going to be possible under Common Core? We can compact and get, or is it having that sort of top tier track? And that's something that at this point in time we don't have an answer to.
So the one final piece that we want to show you around this idea is that under our current along this idea of what is the goal for this pathway, if we're trying to get to calculus in 11th grade, we spent some time exploring what that looks like for our most recent graduates who might have been or who were on this middle accelerated pathway as 7th graders. And so we found the data for let's see, I guess we can start here. We analyzed the data of our most recent graduating class, 2013. There was 121 students who started in 7th grade in the Algebra 1 course, and that was back in 2007, 2008. And so this is the high school math coursework that they went through as 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders. And so what this is, the numbers here that you see here are the semesters of mathematics that they took in each of those years, because some of our courses are year-long courses and some of them are semester-long courses. So we kept track of the semester, the number of semesters they took. And so what this story started to tell us was that we have Algebra 1 students in 7th grade that by the time they get to the end of that sequence, in 9th grade, most of them were taking Algebra 2 trig honors or GATE at the time. And that's the track that they should have been on in 9th grade, but we did lose some of them along the way. The red indicates students that did not quite stay up to that path. Either they are in an Algebra 2 non-honors course or possibly geometry or Algebra 1. As they go into 10th grade, we have, you can see most of those kids moved on into pre-calculus honors. Some of them in red there are still not quite at that same pathway. But we also have some blue. Blue are kids that went beyond So we had some 10th graders who were in pre-calculus, or sorry, and calculus AP, AB, and AP calculus BC, and a math course, a high school math course, Math 150, 160. Remember, those aren't numbers of students, those are numbers of semesters. So, and then in 11th grade, we have a large portion of students who in 11th grade on this pathway would be taking college level mathematics. And that's all this purple here, that's all college level mathematics. The dark purple that were pulled out, that is a full year of college calculus, which our most accelerated kids in 7th grade would be on track for taking a full year of college level calculus. Something that Janet and I experienced. Do you want to describe this experience of going to that framework committee meeting?
We were sitting in a framework committee, in a meeting where people were describing pathways, and somebody said, we're taking our students and we're accelerating them only to slow down. And I said, what are they talking about? And they began to describe what calculus AB and what calculus BC actually are, and that calculus AB is a one-semester class. And so when I look up here in the light purple somewhere, that is calculus AB. So we've taken our strongest students, we've sped them through math, and when they take calculus AB in 11th grade, they're taking one semester of calculus in 1 year. So they're going at a rate of half a course per year. So we've slowed them down. And then when they follow up calculus BC in their senior year, they are calculus BC includes AB and BC. So now we've taken our fastest, our students that are the most talented math students, and we've asked them to take calculus, 1 year of calculus in 2 years. So we've sped them up to have them take calculus in 2 years. And this was not something that really, it took us a long time. It took us hours to start thinking about what the implications of that were, what's happening at all the different schools. Later having conversations with math teachers, and we looked in our course description and in our course catalogs it says that AB is a prerequisite for BC, which doesn't make sense. And so we stumbled upon this calculus issue, and then the question was, why are we rushing kids to get to calculus in 11th grade? And then the next question was, what's their experience in 12th grade? They've got to a full year of calculus, and now they're not going off to college. What are they doing? And
So in 12th grade, what we found for this cohort of students, first of all, one thing you should notice is that it started at 244 semesters in 9th grade and 240 in 10th, which is pretty consistent with how many students there were starting. But then in 11th grade, not a huge drop-off, but then in 12th grade, a pretty sizable drop-off to these students only taking 122 semesters of courses. And the light purple down there is college-level math courses, but at that slower rate. And these are our strongest students that they started off in 7th grade on this most accelerated pathway. And so our question is, as math teachers, what are we doing that is pushing them through and then feeling like they aren't quite developing mathematically the way a university would want them to develop? University wants them to have 4 years of mathematics and having a calculus experience that will prepare them. And for our strongest, and there's a statement in there from the UC, CSU, and community college organization that talks about mathematics preparation. And one of the things that they have highlighted is the importance of a strong 4-year experience. And this is this document here, the Statement of Competencies in Mathematics expected of entering college students, and it's from these folks here. And one of the things that they say on page 16 is, and I'll pull up page 16, for folks that are going to be college quantitative majors in college. is, so this is part 4. There's certainly a lot you can read prior to part 4, but desirable areas of focus for students in quantitative majors. When you go down to calculus, a high school calculus course should have the same depth, rigor, and content as university calculus courses designed for physical sciences and engineering majors. Prior to taking the course, students should have successfully completed 4 years of secondary school mathematics. And they suggest taking an AP examination to help back that up.
All right, I'm going to pause you for just a moment because it's 6:15, and obviously there's a lot of material in here that we can read and ask questions through Dr. Cash of the TOSAs, but I wanted to ask, did you want to show us the rollout plan briefly before we close out the workshop?
A good thing to highlight. Under this idea of developing these more rigorous courses and the support needed for teachers to develop these courses and shift their instruction, these green classes that are outlined in green are classes that we definitely need to roll out. Math 7, Math 8, first year high school 1, year 2, year 3. We are proposing that we phase in for next year, Math 7, Math 8, and Math 1, allow all of the secondary math teachers to focus on those 3. And then when we have the following year, we bring in Math 2, and the following year we bring in Math 3. And the rationale or the ability to do this is because what we're going to propose is that we have a phase out of our 97 courses. So what that means is currently any student that is in an Algebra 1 course right now who successfully completes that course, let them finish the high school sequence under that same set of standards, or designed around that same set of standards. To change students' program, high school math program, college preparatory math program, partway through that high school experience, I think we do a lot of, it's very likely that we will create gaps in their mathematical development when they go off to college that we don't want to create as we transition. And so allow students to finish, which means that next year we would have no more Algebra 1 based on the 97 standards, have in next school year 97 geometry and Algebra 2 from our old standards. The following year we would phase out geometry, bring on the second year of Common Core mathematics, and then only have the Algebra 2 course from 97. And then finally, in the final year of this 3-year transition, we would have no more 97 Algebra 2 and only have those 3 years of Common Core math. The caveat to all this is that teachers teaching those 97 standards, it does not mean that they aren't focused on transitioning those courses individually. They would still bring in those math practices. They would still bring in content to help transform those courses, but we just don't change the students' program, the students' transcripts partway through their high school math experience. So that's what we are proposing.
Any questions on that, board members? One question I have is, when will this all come to us for action?
In January.
In January, first meeting in January?
Hope so. Because really the first question is integrated versus traditional, because that will determine then the course descriptions our math departments need to write. And then they would bring forward the course descriptions for your approval. My guess is they would, you would just get these first 3, Math 7, Math 8, and Math 1, if it's integrated. And so that, and if the decision is traditional by the board, then they still need to rewrite the courses. So.
One way or another, the junior high math teachers are going to have a really exciting year next year. I'm sure they're really thrilled about the new challenges, and those teachers that are teaching essentially first-year math in high school. So, great. Any other comments or questions, Ms. Limon?
I just, when you had the graph of the semesters, you had the pie charts. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything like that for an actual number of students as opposed to semesters? Mm-hmm. Is that something that we could see? Because I think that would be interesting to actually figure out how many or what percentage of our students are taking the current traditional pathways we have and how we think about it as we move forward.
Sure.
It gets very complicated because students don't take full years of math, and so they take partial years of math, and so that's where we were trying to figure out the best way to show this information,
Right.
because it's not really clean.
Yes, as they become seniors, they may sign up for a full year math class and decide after one semester they're done.
I will reiterate what I said at the end of the last item, that this material is currently available for the public to view in the superintendent's office through iTunes University online, but it will be posted to the website also by tomorrow?
Hope so. That's,
That was a little less definite.
well, I haven't had the conversation with Mr. Schneider, Dr. Schneider yet, so
All right.
he's saying yes, so
All right.
yes.
If you could do that, Dr. Schneider, I'm sure that the public would appreciate that, and thank you so much. All right?
Thank you, board members, for hanging in there for a good workshop.
And I'm sorry that we ended up having to compact and accelerate you.